The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
Team USA emerging as the victors of the 2026 Olympic men's hockey tournament. It comes at the expense of Canada in the gold medal game, a 2-1 overtime win for Team USA. Jack Hughes scoring the overtime winner for Team USA. There's a lot we need to get to into this game, and we're going to find a way to do it throughout this entire episode. For those who would want to get questions in for Ask CJ, we'll put that till later this week. CJ, what was your instant reaction when you saw that goal go in and Team USA got to celebrate an Olympic gold medal?
My honest thought was, what a tournament, what a game. This was all worth all the 12-year buildup and the wait and the hand-wringing about not getting best on best hockey. I thought it was a game that takes your breath away. I mean, that's what we all want to see, is that kind of hockey where the stakes are so high, where the margins are so thin. And, you know, there was 10 moments in that game where if you were in a busy bar, say, you went to the person next to you like, what just happened? Or if you were home alone, you texted your group chat with your buddies or your dad or your best friend or whatever. Like, it was a moment where it connected people, right? It brought a lot of people together. There's a lot of emotion. Obviously, you see a huge outpouring of emotion and a lot of different emotions online after the game. But for me, it was an awesome, breathtaking game. And I'll tell you this, you're not going to hear one negative thing out of my mouth about either team, about decisions that were made or not made, about on the ice in the management suite in the last few months. I mean, I think that was the kind of hockey that we all want to see when you bring the best players together. And you paint it with nationalism, you put them on the Olympic stage. I mean, they were worth that platform on this day and a lot more than that.
Can we go into more detail on how you felt Canada played that game? They got more shots. They had all these quality chances. They had all of these different breakaways. Their best players were given opportunities to be the guy against Team USA, and they come out on the losing end. When you look back at that game, what's your read on it? How do you feel Canada played in that game?
I think when the emotion wears off and the key people on this team really look at it with cold, hard eyes, Julian, I think they're going to think that's the best way you can lose if you have to lose. That, there's obviously some second guessing that will go on for individuals who had glorious scoring opportunities when one more goal, could have kept that from going to overtime. But beyond that, from a process standpoint, I mean, Canada for the second and third period dominated the game and produced way more than enough in terms of high quality looks, where they could have, scored a few goals and had it not be so close. They didn't do so. I don't say that at all as an excuse, or this isn't cope or anything like that. I mean, the flip side of that equation, we should talk about really what does this mean in the US? I think this could be a total game changer win for hockey in that country. I mean, it's been going in that direction, but, I look at big picture momentum from the way the four nations got kind of into the collective psyche on both sides of the border, but in America in particular, with people that don't necessarily watch hockey on a daily basis. I felt like it crossed that threshold again here at the Olympics and especially at the gold medal game. And the U.S. certainly doesn't need to apologize for how they won or anything like that. I mean, your goaltender is part of the team, and Connor Hellebuyck clearly was the main reason that the U.S. hung around in this game and found a way ultimately to win it. But, was not the miracle on ice, but there were some miraculous elements to it. Just with, the paddle save by Hellebuyck, Nathan McKinnon hitting the side of the post or the side of the net, with an open look at it. The fact you had McDavid and Celebrini breakaways, to say nothing of some of the looks that Celebrini especially had in the slot where he, shot high or wide. I mean, it was an onslaught. Canada gave them the best they had, and the U.S., didn't break under that. And they found a way in 3-on-3 in overtime to take advantage of, a decision down the ice where Makar got caught up, and they did what you have to do to win. So, hell of a hockey game. I think a game we'll think back to in a lot of ways. Just played at a breathtaking speed and so much sort of interplay in there. And the U.S. finally, can move on in some ways. I think from 1980, they'll never move on from it, but the storyline now isn't about something that happened even before I was born. It's a win for a new generation, and I think you'll see this. I think this will be talked about in 20 or 30 years as a moment where a lot of people that might not have got into hockey did down in the U.S. And I can't help but see it as anything but a victory for the sport in a sense, because I do think that hockey's really had its moments here in the last couple of years.
I really appreciate how civil and how reasonable you've been sounding to start this podcast because I watched that game. And you're absolutely right with the way you described it for Team USA. This is a big win for them. They've had to look at the golden goal and all these other Canadian successes. And now they're on the other side, on the winning side. They have a golden goal that's going to be touted about for decades on decades. They don't have to just look back at 1980. 46 years after the fact, Jack Hughes has his moment. Team USA has this moment.
What a photo, too, with Hughes with the bloody mouth and then missing a tooth and then some. I mean, with the flag draped over him, like I'm sure you're going to see that image splashed everywhere for as long as we can remember.
And of course we'll see images of Zach Werenski and Austin Matthews and Matthew Tkachuk holding Johnny Gaudreau's jersey on the ice as well. I do appreciate what Team USA was able to do in that moment and to honor Johnny Gaudreau as they've done since his passing. It was really cool to see them have that touch of class. But as someone who did not watch that game with full objectivity, going straight down the middle. I had passion in my heart watching that game. You could pretty much tell which side I was rooting for. I hate this. I hate this result, man. Like, Team USA is going to... Yeah, but I hate this. Team USA is going to use this for the next 4 years as like, hey, man, we were little brother for all this time, and now we have the one-up on you guys? Like, I hate it. I caution people who go on social media and they get into the back and forths and say, oh, well, Team USA won on 3-on-3. Now's not the time for that because you're going to get a whole bunch of people on the American side who do not care about that, and they're just going to dunk on you, and you're going to be fodder. But I am allowed to be like, oh, man, I don't like this feeling. I don't like the feeling of seeing Team Canada play as well as they did throughout that entire tournament, and they come home with silver. I think I'm allowed to feel that way.
Well, of course you are. I mean, pull up a spot on my couch here. We can talk it through. I mean, I think that, big picture, that this is so great for hockey. I mean, it shouldn't be just one team that wins. And, look how close the games were. I mean, yeah, both Canada and the U.S. found themselves in overtime in the quarterfinals. Like there was an alternate timeline where both teams are already back home and practicing with their teammates in the NHL and watching, an unexpected gold medal final play out on Sunday. I mean, it's so hard to win. I hope that everyone remembers that as we go through this. It literally is like playing 3 Game 7s in a row and 4 if you play the qualification game, but there's no room for error. Like I feel like there can be no excuses in that environment. It's just like in a Game 7 because, if you get down to that point where you're anything can happen in the one game. Calls can be missed. Calls can be made. Plays can be made. Calls missed. Players can make a mistake. Like you basically introduce all of the chaos into the sport when you get down to a game where so many people care about it, and it's literally just 60 minutes in this case. A little less than 62 with the overtime. But you compress all of the chaos possible in hockey into like that moment, and so I think it's totally fine to feel things. Obviously we both live in Canada. I think the whole country to some degree is feeling something. The great thing about the Olympics, I've always thought, it's a tournament that I used to say my mom would watch, my late mother now, but my mom wasn't one to go out of her way to watch any hockey game. But when it got to that kind of level, I remember specifically the 2002 final in Salt Lake City, on a Sunday afternoon, we had like 20 people jammed in our living room. Watching that game. And so, what's great about this is it makes people feel something. It brings them together. It shows off the best and the worst in some ways of hockey. And the only worst I say here is just, there's so little you can control. I mean, Nathan McKinnon saying in the mix zone after, right? Like, I'll let you judge who the better team was today. Well, he's right in theory, because Canada definitely had the better scoring chances, but you give out gold medals based on goals on the board, and Canada didn't break through enough, obviously. And so, yeah, I have no problem with you feeling anything or anyone else, but what I felt, quite honestly, is I just felt like the magic of that kind of day. And I don't even know if we can get it in the Stanley Cup final. I mean, we've been lucky. We've had some great finals the last few years. We had a Game 7 2 years ago, Florida Edmonton, after Edmonton came back from 3-0 in the series. We've had, we get lots of great moments in the Stanley Cup playoffs and throughout an NHL season too. But I just think it's tough to match what you get in that kind of game. It was so damn close. It was so fast. A lot of things happened and didn't happen. And man, well, I'm telling you, you'll remember that game for a long, long, long time. And part of the reason you're going to remember it, Julian, is because of how you feel, right? You'll remember this feeling. And maybe the next time Canada wins a big game somewhere, and I don't know when that'll be, whether it's the World Cup in 2028 or maybe it's 4 Olympics from now. It might take a long time. You don't know how the future is going to unfold, but you'll probably feel a little more excited on that day because you had to go through a loss like this one.
When you woke up on Sunday morning ahead of the game and you saw that Sidney Crosby would not be available for Team Canada on the ice in that gold medal game, what was your first reaction?
My first thought, and obviously was in touch with some people, was this is classic Sidney Crosby, that, he was completely putting the team and his teammates in the country ahead of his own desires. I do believe he was reasonably close to potentially playing. Like, this wasn't, it's not like he knew 5 days ago there was no chance he was playing. I mean, they did everything they could behind the scenes to get him to a position where he could be in the game. And he obviously skated a couple times. And ultimately, when a decision had to be made, he chose that, he wouldn't be able to play at that level. And probably some fear there that if he dressed and played a shift or two and had to pull himself out, that he would be, taking Canada down a man. So, my first thought was this is the exact, this is who Sidney Crosby is. It's who he's always been. I think anyone who's been around or even watched him, from some distance has kind of figured this out long ago. But, he's the biggest gentleman in the sport. I think he truly does things the right way all the time. And that includes making what had to be an agonizing decision, to not give it a try in a game like that. But, the flip side of that is look at how fast it was. Pretty physical at times. If there's any sort of structural concerns about your knee, if you can't push off the way you would like to, if you don't feel strong enough, I mean, look how Sidney Crosby skates. He's got such a powerful skating stride. Like if you can't be yourself, it's a greater disservice not to play, to play but just not play very well. So I just, quite honestly, like it's disappointing in the sense that we all love I think every part of us that gets into doing the kind of work we do, you love sort of the perfect stories, right? The almost the fairy tale type stuff. And this had the possibility of that, had he been able to play, had he been able to contribute, score a big goal, whatever it was, well, it would have been an all timer. But, weirdly, I think this tells us as much about him as any of the positive things he's done on the ice over the years. If you take a step back, if you understand the circumstances and look at the choice he made.
I appreciate that explanation. Up until I saw Sunday morning that he wasn't going to play, I thought in my head he was going to find a way to play because of the stakes, because of the moment, because of how important he is to that group. Even talking about it with friends the night before, friends would come up to me and be like, hey, you think Sidney's going to play? I was like, yeah, he's going to play. This is a moment. This is a game where you're going to find him and he'll rise up and he'll find a way to play through whatever injury he has. And yes, like he ultimately did the right thing in terms of not putting himself out there and not being of real service to Team Canada if he was that seriously hurt. Just disappointing in the sense that this is a game, this is a moment where you want to see Sidney Crosby on the ice, and it was a shame that we weren't able to see him, obviously because of injury reasons from the Czechia game.
Yeah, and you'd like to see Josh Morrissey out there, who was limited to one period, and you'd like to see Braden Point get to the tournament, as he was supposed to be. I mean, this is the way it goes. Team USA was supposed to have Seth Jones, pardon me. A lot of countries were missing players. I mean, this is unfortunately the sort of stuff that comes up. But I'm with you. I got juked out a little bit by the Hockey Canada admin, putting out the tweet, teasing the game about 8 hours before puck drop with the Crosby picture, kind of made me think, okay, they wouldn't put that on there if they didn't think he was playing. But you know, and I'm not trying to roast the admin, but I'm just saying, I thought that gave me a feeling like, okay, this is happening. And, you know, there definitely was some optimism about the possibility of it. Ultimately, Sidney had to make a call for himself. This wasn't trainers. This wasn't a GM. It wasn't a head coach. It wasn't the Pittsburgh Penguins. You know, it was the man himself had to make a call on whether he thought he could help the team out. And he just didn't feel like he was there physically. And again, you can only imagine what's in his mind on the flight home, the whole bit, just, you know, how much he puts into this. You know, I know he was the main guy in the group chat for a long time for like, you know, his legacy is winning, right? And, you know, fortunately they've had a really good season in Pittsburgh, and maybe we're going to get to see him playoff games this year. But, you know, for a long time, this 2026 Olympics looked like the only thing he had a chance to win on the horizon, because the Penguins were not in a competitive window, and, you know, we knew that he'd be part of this team. So, you know, I think he did everything he could to play. I think he did everything he could after not being able to play to help behind the scenes. But, you know, he was definitely missed on the ice.
Speaking of legacy, one player I couldn't help but think of after that game is the player who ends up wearing the C in Sidney's absence, Connor McDavid. Obviously, he wants to win too. It doesn't happen for him with Team Canada on Sunday. What did you think of his performance throughout the tournament? And what does a result like what happened on Sunday against Team USA contribute or affect his legacy?
I don't worry about his legacy. Like, I think it's a natural question, and I see everyone kind of going for the bridesmaid stuff. And you know, I think Connor McDavid is so far and above everyone else who plays the game that, you know, ultimately when we look back on whatever time he had as a player, what's going to stand out is that the moments he brought people out of his seats, the eye-popping statistics he's put up absolutely everywhere, right from really his rookie season in the NHL, before that in the Ontario Hockey League. I mean, even this Olympic tournament, right? He set a new record for the most points by a player in Olympics featuring NHL players. So, you know, he's named the tournament MVP. I should note on that, the media have to vote after the first periods. Some of the similar problems you get at times with Conn Smythe voting is you vote early, because I do think Connor Hellebuyck, you know, had a pretty strong case by the end of the gold medal game to be, you know, not just called the best goalie in the tournament, which he was, but likely the MVP as well. But that aside, I mean, I thought McDavid had a great tournament. You can only imagine, like, we know the fire that burns within him. I think it was actually evident throughout this event. For me, he was, you know, right from game one, he didn't dip his toe in. You know, he was there. He meant business. He was dragging his team into the fight. You know, even the way he celebrated or didn't, some of, you know, the overtime goal or the late goal by McKinnon, like, you got the sense that he was very much all about trying to get the business taken care of. You know, he's on the ice in 3-on-3, tried to make a rush up the ice shortly before the Hughes goal. You know, he's just trying to end the game there. I mean, if you're Canada, as much as, and I'm not going to even bang this drum, I think we did mention it last episode, so this is not front running. I do not like 3-on-3 in the knockout stage of this tournament. Like, you had all of Switzerland, Czechia, Sweden, and Canada, you know, basically knocked out of the Olympics in a 3-on-3 overtime. I really wish there was some better way to do it. Anyway, there's no soapboxing about that. The rules were the same. Everyone knew going in that was what it was. Ironically, right. I think that it should actually have favored Canada. I mean, they got 2 shifts in that overtime with McDavid, McKinnon, and Makar. You know, no disrespect to anyone the U.S. was putting out there, but, you know, on paper, that would look like an advantage. But, you know, came up 1 goal short. And so McDavid, who was already just dying to win something, as he detailed in that Players Tribune piece, you know, I don't think he lacks for motivation by any means, but I'm going to guess we're going to see the absolute best of him, and maybe even a new level from him down the stretch and into the playoffs, you know, after enduring another disappointing loss.
I'm not going to go through every single player on the Canadian roster, but there are specific guys worth mentioning, including Nathan McKinnon, considering what he went throughout this tournament. Clearly not 100% near the end, but he gets an overtime, but not an overtime, but a late game winning goal in the semifinals. And unfortunately for him, on the ice for that game winning goal allowed, what did you make of Nathan McKinnon's tournament? And just him too. I mean, he does have a Stanley Cup to his name, but of course he wants that gold medal.
Yeah, I mean, given that he wasn't at 100%, I mean, he scored 2 massive goals in the tournament because he also scored in the Czechia game when they were on the comeback trail there and tied that game. So, I still think he had his moments. On the winning goal, you could see it's almost like he had too much time to think. He was caught between, do I just go play the puck, as the U.S. is rushing up, which there would have been some risk because if they chipped it past him, it's a 2-0 or maybe even a 3-0, the way that rush was unfolding. But I think, by not sure, it certainly wasn't decisive defensively. But I mean, I also want to say, like, that's 3-on-3. Like, the whole point is you take a chance at one end and then it's coming the other way. Like, that's just how it goes. It's a constant sort of risk reward assessment. I thought he didn't get to the same level we probably saw him at the Four Nations, but you have to feel that on some level that's probably tied to his health. I can't know for sure. And he'll definitely be seeing that yawning cage that he hit the side of the net on. Yeah. He's the kind of guy that, I think probably most of the athletes at this level obviously take things very seriously, very detailed in their approach, but McKinnon strikes me as the kind of guy that might stew on something like that. And so, tough moment for him. But as I said, if you could be Team Canada and you drew up who was getting those absolute 5-alarm fire grade A chances, the right guys had it on their stick. They just didn't make good with it. And you got to tip your cap to, who knows, maybe there was some divine intervention in there from Johnny Gaudreau, depending on what you believe. It's also a game of, certainly not a game of perfect, as I like to say, hockey. Things happen. The game happens so fast. But yeah, I thought that McKinnon was what you'd hope for Canada. And, he fell 1 goal short. If he puts it in that empty net, that's why I don't want to change too much of what I would say, because he was that close to potentially scoring the tournament winning goal for Canada too.
That's nightmare fuel, man. Like,
Devon Taves might be actual nightmare fuel, I think.
McKinnon, I feel for those 3 Colorado Avalanche players in Makar, McKinnon, and Taves today. Taves had that chance right in front, and the paddle save from Connor Hellebuyck. Cale Makar was on the ice, I think, for all 3 goals that were scored in this game, including the one he scored.
But he also scored. Like Taves and Makar were defending when Boldy made that initial rush and scored. So obviously, if you're a defensive player, like that can't happen. And so that would be in your mind. I feel like if you're Cale Makar, you then at least scored after that. So you're not happy, you've at least, you've kind of got it back. Taves had one look actually in the high slot where I think he shot wide. That was great. And then he had obviously the goal where the crazy paddle save by Hellebuyck, sure goal taken away. So, he's someone who wasn't brought to Milan to score goals, as a primary function. He obviously scored a big goal too in the semifinal game. So, but I just think that's tough. Like that's the sort of thing in 10 years or 20 years, you're having a beer and still going like, man, what if? But again, I think that's what makes the sport so great and what makes a day like today so great. There were going to be moments like that for on one side or the other for some of the individuals in the game. It matters that much, right? And the 2010 American team can attest to that. They got the Zach Parise tying goal in the last minute in Vancouver, and they've had to watch the golden goal replayed a million times by Sidney Crosby since then. But they were that close to winning, right? And there was moments in that game they could have got it done. So, I think athletes at least are used to moving on, because you could probably drive yourself batty if you stewed on everything the way a fan might like that. But tough flight for the crew from Denver, because they were all kind of in on, they were some of Canada's best players, but they also had moments that didn't go exactly their way as well.
Guys, another episode where I get to talk to you all about Mack Weldon and their Ace collection. You've noticed CJ and I have been wearing them on some previous episodes, whether it's polos like this one I'm wearing right now, this really nice gray kind of anthracite color looking polo. I think it's really sweet. CJ's been rating the website for some of their different half zips. They've got some really great quality sweatshirts as well, t-shirts, even down to undergarments as well. They really have you covered with really good, durable, quality materials. And if you want to be like us and you want to tap in on some clothes from Mack Weldon, go to mackweldon.com. And if you are doing an order of $125 or more, use the code CJ to get 20% off. That's Mack Weldon, MackWeldon.com, and use the promo code CJ to get 20% off your first order of $125 or more. I know you don't want to go too much of the negatives. I know there are people who are going to nitpick on this team and say, oh, they should have brought this guy. They should have brought that guy. This player should have been there.
So what did they want? They wanted 44 shots in the gold medal game instead of 42. Like,
I don't know. Like, you're right. They played as well as they could have. Like that's a game. If you replay that, they could have easily won that game 5-1.
Of course they could have. And honestly, Bill Guerin, he got nitpicked maybe as much as anyone for some of the Team USA selections. And look at, it's Trocheck and JT Miller were key part of their penalty kill, and they killed all 18 penalties they took in the tournament, including a long 5-on-3 in the championship game, plus a late power play in the final couple minutes of regulation. I mean, I guess to me, that's why I didn't want to be negative about anyone, because I look at it like both teams did exactly what they were built to do. They got down to a moment where it's one shot wins the whole thing. Neither team lost in the event. Both teams, if you look at it from a process standpoint, dominated on the shot clock, on the chance clock. And, really Team Canada dominated the gold medal game from those same measurements too. But, it's just hard for me to think it would have been different with any other player. I mean, if you played on a different day, I just think maybe Celebrini scores on his breakaway. Maybe McKinnon puts it in. Maybe it hits Hellebuyck's paddle, but rolls up and over and in instead of going wide. I mean, or flip side, maybe Binnington lets in a couple that he was actually pretty good in this game too.
He was.
And so he wasn't the reason Canada lost, as much as goaltending has always been the story around that team. But maybe the U.S. scores a couple fluky ones, and you play these games again and again and again. Who's to say what would have went down? You only got to play it once, and it was 2-1 USA when the day ended.
Oh, man, hearing that scoreline. Man. Anyway,
they won 2-1 in the quarters as well over Sweden.
They did. I didn't even ask you specifically about Macklin Celebrini, who, I get it, he had the breakaways. It didn't work out for him on this day. But I still thought it was a really special tournament for him. A teenager who shows out on the world stage and impresses with the Team Canada group. I mean, when you think of the future being bright for Team Canada, as of course it should, the fact that Macklin Celebrini has that heads up on the coming generation behind him with the experience he'll have at the Olympics, that's really awesome for him. Yeah,
his tournament was insane. Even didn't score in the last two games. He had 14 shots on goal in the two games, and easily could have scored or had the kind of looks that you would want to score. It's hard to put too fine a point on the fact that, Canada's roster is littered with players with much lengthier resumes, by product of being older, but accomplished more. And he was more important to the team than almost all of them. And just in terms of his usage and the way John Cooper and the coaching staff relied upon him. So, his life will never be the same as a hockey player after that tournament. I think it was such a big performance that, while this guy's gotten tons of pub and positive stories written about him and lots of, people saying nice things about him, especially throughout this season, it's going to be on another level now. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. This is a generational type of guy. That's the possibility that's there for him. He has to go out and earn it every day. And that's, I think, what's so great in watching him play is just how determined he is, he's obviously got skill and an ability to kind of know where to put himself offensively. Like, his brain looks like a supercomputer, the way he gets his way around the offensive zone in particular. But so much of his success comes from the fact that, he's a conscientious player. He doesn't give up in a shift. He's just a workhorse out there. And you're looking at someone who's so young. It's impossible to know how far he might take that, how high he might climb, what it looks like. I mean, I don't know, but the fact that this was his opening salvo as a Team Canada Olympian, as the youngest Olympian ever in the NHL era for Team Canada. I mean, that was a tournament that's going down, it'll be talked about for a long, long time. Like, as I say, I think he leaves this tournament a different player in the eyes of the hockey world than he came in. That's how special it was.
Beyond Celebrini, what is next for Hockey Canada with regards to best on best tournaments and what they could look like, whether on the ice, management, coaching staff? Maybe it's way too soon to look into the future, but how do you see it?
Well, one day we're going to be talking about Sidney Crosby putting together one of these teams. I don't know when. You
think he has it to be a GM and exec?
He's going to have the opportunity, that much I'm sure. I don't know what he's going to want to do, and I don't know when he's going to step away from playing. Doesn't look like a guy that's anywhere near done playing to me at this point, but I totally see him being part of this program beyond his playing days. As for the tournament, what they learned, I don't think they changed too much. Honestly, for as much as everybody wants to pick their favorite player that was left at home and use that, use the fact they didn't win a gold medal as an opportunity to stump for Evan Bouchard or Matthew Schaefer or anyone, I really don't think the management group will have regrets about this. They'll just be a little disappointed they didn't find a way to win the last game, despite the roster they did assemble. I don't think Hockey Canada changes its approach much. I think that they have a lot to be excited about because Celebrini is already so good and it's so apparent, because they have a Matthew Schaefer coming. Connor Bedard will 100%, I would expect, be at the 2028 World Cup, but especially the next Olympics. Canada's not falling off a map here. There's still questions about goaltending, big picture, and where that's going to go. What's the blue line going to look like? I would think, clearly we've probably seen Drew Doughty's last game in a national team sweater, at least in a best on best scenario. But even guys like Colton Parayko may not get back to this spot. I mean, there's going to be some turnover on the blue line, but I just feel like Canada keeps churning out these incredible players like a Celebrini, who's only a year and a half into his pro career. So, I think they'll be back and hungrier than ever the next time they have a chance to play in a tournament like this. And, the sort of gold standard they hold themselves to won't be changed, even though they don't have their hands on the golds right now. I mean, it's pretty interesting. The U.S., I don't have the full list. The U.S. obviously won the men's and women's Olympic golds. They won the 2025 World Hockey Championship, both men's and women's. I believe they won the under 18. We're at a time right now where USA hockey is never, it's never been more successful. The U.S. at any one time has never held this many concurrent sort of world championships. So, the challenge for Canadian hockey and Slovak hockey and Finnish hockey and Swiss hockey and Swedish hockey is still immense. Because there's another behemoth on the block now, right? I mean, that's the thing. The U.S. has been a competitive team for a long, long time, but now, they're getting mentioned alongside Canada in these sort of, when we're trying to size up what each team can be at these events. So, I don't think Canada is going to change a whole lot other than just the natural turnover of the roster from players getting older. Be curious to see, and it's way too soon to say or guess, but what they do with the coaching staff. Do they give this, John Cooper another go at, the next one? I mean, I didn't see anything in this tournament that would say they shouldn't. But who knows how they'll view those decisions. But the greatest thing for every hockey fan out there is we're in this window now where there's all these tournaments. They just keep coming and coming and coming. And we're only 2 years from the next one, which is meant to be a World Cup. But then beyond 2 years after that is an Olympics. And, I think that it's going to create even more interest in all those events. And these storylines will carry on from one to another, even with the passing of 2 years in the middle.
And if you have Canada on their top level, you have the USA being as dominant as they can, Slovakia having a great tournament, Finland getting themselves a bronze medal, Germany, they left disappointed. They felt they could have done so much better at this tournament. We're at a point now where this is not this is not a two-horse race. There are so many countries who for years have been knocking on the door of being powers. And for these best-on-best tournaments, we're all the winners as viewers, as media, and fans for these tournaments to see how this goes. Like, to your point, like, yeah, it's exciting to see that all these teams have made all these strides and have gotten better. And it's not just Canada dominating everything. Like, this is you can tell I've kind of petered out from the first 5 minutes of the show where there were more emotions, but this is great that we've reached this point.
Well, look at the World Junior Tournament, right? And Czechia's had a lot of success there the last few years. Obviously, the Americans have won a bunch in the last 10 years, off and on with Canada, kind of splitting the gold medals. I mean, it's the pipeline that tells you what's coming in terms of the next wave of players that will play in sort of best on best competition. So, yeah, it is great. I mean, I still see it as two giants, like Canada and the US. I don't think that's going to change in the near term. Will be the co-favorites, or will be 1A, 1B, whichever way we're grading them at that point in time, entering these events, and then you'll have sort of layers below them. But certainly you get into single game eliminations, you can get a Slovakia run as they did to the bronze medal game. You can get something similar like that in the future with other teams, and maybe someone, even gets through to a gold medal game. It's definitely out there. And so, I think that's great. And, really, I don't know if we've given the Americans enough flowers here. I mean, they finally did it.
Oh, they're next.
And I was going to say that, it's hard to calculate on the day that they've just won the gold medal, but finally breaking through and winning, no matter how you won, like, that's going to come with a new level of confidence. And I'm not saying these guys had doubt. I mean, they were so close to winning the Four Nations. So many of them have won at the under 18, under 20 level, even the World Championships last year. Like that room was full of guys who have won in those colors, but they hadn't won in this way, right? On the biggest stage against the best team on the other side. And, the way Mike Sullivan addressed his team, I'm sure you saw the clip before the game. He said, play with American swagger. I think you're going to see more American swagger at these tournaments, even than we have in the past. And I think sometimes that confidence can help a team through when maybe you don't have your best night, just a belief you're going to find a goal. I mean, to be honest, that's what Canadian hockey's sort of been built on internationally for a long, long time is sometimes winning the game where you aren't the best team, sometimes finding a way to come back when you're behind. I mean, that's pretty crazy. You look at this tournament in Milan, Julian, they led 35 seconds in the last two games, Canada, while playing pretty well. But it was only that late go-ahead goal against Finland in the semifinals, and they didn't lead at all in the gold medal game against the U.S. So, I think you have to have that belief and self-confidence from somewhere. And I just think winning is going to propel this U.S. team to even higher levels of like truly being favorites. I mean, they were called favorites entering this tournament, but I think a lot of people still sort of thought, well, yeah, but they have to answer that question. Well, the question's been answered, right? Connor Hellebuyck is a big game goalie. Jack Hughes can come through and score a big goal. Austin Matthews just had the biggest win of his life. Jack Eichel, was in tears in the mix zone. You go up and down the roster, like a lot of these players are going to be around for still the next couple of tournaments anyway in best on best. And they're going to have that experience of winning. And I do think it means something. It's part of why Sidney Crosby holds the respect he does in the Canadian dressing room, right? It's who he is as a person first and foremost, but he literally is a serial winner. Like he's just done nothing but win his whole life. And there's habits that lead to that. There's behaviors. There's a way to go about your business that I think increases your odds in these sort of events. And the U.S. has probably found a recipe that works for them now that they hadn't ever before this tournament started in Milan.
Where would the Americans be without Connor Hellebuyck and that, 42 save performance against Canada? He was the best player on the ice. He kept them in the entire game, especially as Canada was trying to pour it on. We mentioned the paddle save on Devontae's partway through the game. He was dialed in from the moment go. His best performance of the 2025-2026 campaign to this point, because he has not made that many saves in a game this year. The most saves he's made in a game this NHL season is 33. So he's above that for sure. But yeah, Team USA is not celebrating in any fashion without the work of Connor Hellebuyck, who played the finest performance he's had in his pro career to this point.
For sure, especially given the stage and the circumstances, and if he was just average, the stats say Canada would have scored 5 goals in the game. They had an expected goals rate of a little bit more than 5 in all situations, and they scored once. So, he was 4 saves on goals better than expected is what that tells you. I mean, I know not everyone's into the numbers, but I think intuitively, whether you believe the numbers or not, if you watch the game, you can understand that even just a really good performance, and he lets in a couple more goals, just because the players that he stared down on those breakaways, the degree of difficulty on a couple of the saves he made, just even the quality of the chances that Canada missed on. So, that it's his finest hour as a hockey player. And we talked a little bit about Jordan Binnington's legacy the last show. I mean, I think Connor Hellebuyck was a Hall of Famer anyway. 3 Vezina trophies and a Hart Trophy. To me, plus he's still got lots of runway left on his career, was probably going to get him there anyway. But you add a gold medal to the mix, and this performance and being the best goaltender in this tournament, that was Dominik Hasek level kind of thievery at times in that game. And so it adds, do you know what it does? It adds a little bit of narrative to it, Julian. And not everyone loves narrative, but because I think, again, I don't think Connor Hellebuyck had anything really to prove big picture. Like, his career has been spectacular, but there was always that question of the big game. And especially, the playoffs didn't go well for him last year, specifically with the Jets. And so there's questions about whether he could meet the moment and all that stuff. Well, we're not asking that question, whenever the Jets play a big game again, or when he's back in Team USA's net. And, what a performance. I don't know if you watched the whole medal ceremony, but he got his gold medal and was immediately throwing his arms in the air.
I saw that. That was actually a cool moment.
It was cool. You could tell he couldn't keep, and he's a pretty stoic guy. Connor Hellebuyck doesn't give up a lot with his demeanor, right? But he couldn't keep the excitement in. I mean, pretty awesome moment for him and guys up and down that roster. I mean, quite honestly, I think back to that McDavid essay, and he talked about how little he'd won, right? That's the same for a lot of players on the US side. Dylan Larkin, who's a heart and soul guy for this team, right? I mean, I think he had 1 playoff series so far his first year in Detroit. And other than that, he's been with the Red Wings through this long rebuild and, hasn't had a chance to do a whole lot of team type of winning. And man, did he look excited. I mean, even Austin Matthews, probably...
We got to get to him.
I was going to say, probably the guy I know the best in the sense that I've been around him the most of many of the players on that U.S. team. He just looks so damn happy, and rightfully so. I'm not saying that's a surprise, but, so much of his day-to-day life in the NHL hasn't been that, right? It's been a lot of, answering for the Leafs' disappointments and coming up short and not having that kind of playoff run. And for him, I think that there's a little speck of hey, this is something that they'll never take from me. That's on his resume. A guy from, still a pretty cool story. We're used to it by now, but grew up in Phoenix to non-hockey playing parents and a non-hockey playing family because he went to a Phoenix Coyotes game with his uncle, and found through a really circuitous way became an elite level player who could be the captain of the first U.S. men's team to win Olympic gold in 46 years. I mean, it's a pretty good story.
That's a pretty special story. I also liked some of the defensive plays he made in that game too. I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he played on that side of the puck in that victory. I think he's worth shouting out to that point. Connor Hellebuyck, Austin Matthews, Jack Hughes. We got to mention the Hughes brothers on this one. I know for sure Jack Hughes is smiling grin to grin, ear to ear with this gold medal in tow. He's the guy who gets USA the win. Quinn got the goal, the overtime goal earlier on in the medal rounds, but Jack gets the one that really matters for Team USA. He gets bragging rights and a gold medal to his tally. That's awesome for him.
Yeah, and just an incredibly talented guy. And you see him put that talent to good use. He got one. That was a grade A look that he scored on, right? If he doesn't score there, when we're talking about players who are kicking themselves when they go home, that might have been him, right? That's the stakes you have in this. You don't get a lot of them is kind of what I'm getting at. You don't get, there's not a ton of those sort of opportunities in a game. And he ended it. He froze the scoreboard. And it's been such a tough couple of years for him with all the injuries he's had. one of them sort of self-inflicted this year, but even the shoulder issues he's had. I mean, the Devils, it's not been a great environment around that team, and he's obviously a big part of it. And so, to go get that win with your brother, I mean, 2 sets of brothers on the team is pretty unique with the Tkachuks and the Hughes brothers. Imagine sharing it with family to that degree. They'll be thinking about this day for a long, long, long time.
Geez, Matthew Tkachuk, that resume, 2 Stanley Cups and an Olympic gold medal. I mean, I'm sure his family is obviously really proud. But when you think of these USA teams from years past who were knocking on the door, were super competitive, I mean, the fact that they get to see, in a lot of cases, particularly for the Tkachuks specifically, they get to see their kids succeed where they weren't able to succeed. And thinking of, obviously, I covered Brady. We've seen Matthew Tkachuk in the Stanley Cup Finals the last 2 years and win. I thought a lot about those 2 players after that USA result because their name, their legacy, what they're putting on for the sport, obviously, that gets bolstered with a gold medal.
Yeah, and Keith Tkachuk, their father, was part of the '96 World Cup team that won for the U.S. So, that was the last major men's victory, so to speak, in senior hockey. And he was part of that. So yeah, I mean, they were, you could tell they're a talisman, like they're vibes guys. They neither of them, I thought, had a big imprint per se on the gold medal game, but throughout the tournament, they were obviously key members of the team. And when Mike Sullivan talks about, a team full of whiskey drinkers or milk drinkers, and we got lots of whiskey drinkers, I kind of think of those guys. And I don't necessarily mean specific to the whiskey, but just, guys, you might call it, or, sort of dressing room people that I think emit a certain energy. You can see that. So, it's, Matthew Tkachuk, he's kind of reminds me of like those golden years for Crosby in 16 and 17 when he, wins 2 cups, wins the World Cup, wins Conn Smythe trophies, wins the World Cup MVP back then. Like sometimes when you get on a hot run as a player, you can sort of add just a mountain of, get a lot of work done in a short amount of time if you hit the right window. And, it's kind of interesting. No one joined the Triple Gold Club with this win, but now there's a whole bunch of players that are 2/3 of the way there. Either they're members of the World Championship team last year and now have an Olympic gold and need a Stanley Cup, or they've previously won a Stanley Cup, someone like Jack Eichel or Matthew Tkachuk. Now they've got the Olympic gold and now they need to go win a Worlds at some point. And I do wonder, I bet you see America start to send even stronger teams to the Worlds because, I don't know the exact number, but there's like 30 players ever that have won a World Championship, an Olympics, and an Olympic gold. So, we're going to soon, I would guess, start to see more Americans join that kind of tier after this Olympic triumph.
Depending on how Matthew Tkachuk feels at season's end, if the Florida Panthers don't make it, maybe that's what he does, because that would be pretty wild to see him accomplish that feat if he goes to play for Team USA at the World Championship.
Hadn't even, my brain hadn't gone there, but it's a good point. I mean,
that's if Florida misses.
If Florida misses, health dependent, all those things. I mean,
that too.
Usually the Worlds right after an Olympics, it's mostly younger players. It's usually like the next generation that populate those teams. But, there'll be some veterans that go. I remember way back when I covered the 2010 Worlds in Germany after, obviously, a couple months after the Vancouver games, and Corey Perry joined Team Canada at that point. So, every once in a while you get the veteran guys there too. But anyway, I'm down a lost train of thought. It just
you're good.
Feels like the dawning of a new era a little bit. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like when you have a country that hasn't won a gold medal in 46 years, the impact of winning is hard to measure on the day it happens, but you can imagine. I mean, there's just all these sorts of people that I follow on my timeline for other things. You know what I mean? Like football reporters or just people I follow for my own
about it.
Personal interests. And all of a sudden they're talking hockey. It's like my feed. It's weird to see, but it's a big thing. I think it matters. I think it's great for the NHL. It does make me want to go back to what I used to kick them about is how could you ever willingly take these opportunities away from the players? And I know there's some special circumstances. I know the arenas aren't always great, as we covered at length in Milan, but like putting your players on this kind of pedestal. I mean, it might not put money directly into owners' pockets, which is probably what they're measuring, but it's hard to say it's bad for the awareness of the sport, for people wanting to play it. I mean, if you think long enough term, Julian, there's no hockey one day if kids don't want to keep playing hockey, like essentially. Right. I mean, I'm dumbing it down, but you know what I mean? Like the sport's growth requires a funnel at the bottom of more and more players registering, people wanting to play. I just have to believe a whole bunch of kids in lots of countries watch this tournament over the last few weeks, watch the game on Sunday, and are going to be like, that's what I want to do. Like, have a new focus, have a new spirit for the sport. And that will benefit the NHL down the line. It's just going to take a couple decades.
Yeah. As long as the federations that be, they respond to that demand and find ways to make the sport more accessible and cost effective, like that's going to play into that too. Cause
you need that in order. I don't know how you get around that.
Yeah. That's a whole other discussion in itself, but yes, that needs to be done. Any other lingering Team USA thoughts? We've kept the vibe very chill. We could have easily gone in on officiating and the too many men call that should have been. I recognize we've kind of gone with this episode, but any other lingering thoughts you might have?
Yeah, the too many men thing. I'm just trying to think. It happens. Like, it should have been a penalty. It happened.
It didn't directly impact the ending of the game, so that's why it's kind of lost.
Right. But I mean, you might argue it impacted it because maybe you don't get to overtime if that's a power play. Fair. You know, the U.S. got the 4-minute high sticking call on Bennett, but then Canada gets one on Horvat after. You know, I think you just live with a missed call in this sort of game to some degree. It's definitely a missed call. Like, it should have been a penalty. Just because he clearly played the puck. Like, yes, he jumped on the ice and hit his skate, but then he played the puck and there was too many numbers there. It was a bad tournament for too many players on the ice. I mean, maybe Canada should have tried to put 4 on in overtime instead of 3 just to try to even it up. I'm saying that tongue in cheek, of course.
In jest, yes.
But no, I mean, that was an awesome game, and I think awesome games include, like, you have to play through missed calls and things like that. And so I don't see it as any excuse. You know, it's one you would have liked to have, but you know, Canada, it's weird how hockey works. I feel like when you have as many chances as Canada had and didn't bury, the other team often wins that game. There's a sort of, it's like an unofficial equilibrium, but you know, having a 93-second 5-on-3 and not scoring a goal, like that's bigger. That's a bigger deal to me than the missed, you know, extra power play they could have had. You know, and who knows? Like, I don't know how much they practice 5-on-3 at that event. Like, it did cross my mind. You almost don't expect to get a 5-on-3, quite frankly, especially in a gold medal game. But even a tournament like the Olympics, like, did they even spend much time working on that? They had very limited practice time. It didn't look like it in how disorganized they were. But, you know, alas, I think for me, that'll be of the things you could have controlled as you look forward to, like, this is really in the minutia, but maybe the coaching staff will come away going like, do you know what? We got to spend a little more time on 5-on-3 and things like that into the next tournament. Cause that could have been the difference between winning or losing on a game like this for Canada.
2 more quick ones and I'll let you get out of here. We talked about at the beginning of the podcast how incredible that game was. In terms of Olympic gold medal finals you've watched, whether in person or on your couch, where does that game rank for you?
It's, you know, it's neck and neck with Vancouver. And honestly, Salt Lake City was pretty awesome too. It's just, that one's it's far enough back that people don't remember it as well. But there was, you know, the fact that 2002 and 2010 were played in North America, I think is different. You know, it was a home game in 2002 for the US and it was a home game for Canada in 2010. And you had Canada and the US in both of those finals. Like, those were pretty electric games. 2010 might have been the best game I was ever at. And I'd be curious if I had been in the building for this one, how I would have felt. Like, was this better or not? You know, it's hard to get past recency bias, but it was a hell of a game. So I think it's up there with 2010 for me. Hard to say it's better. And I'm not saying that as a Canadian based on outcome. I'm more thinking of drama and storylines and also just the vibe, you know, But look, that building seemed like it was rocking today. Like it had everything you'd want. It had spice. It had a comeback. It had, the atmosphere. So, it's got to be up there with the 2010 final for me. And I don't think 2002 is that far behind. That game ended up being 5-2 with some late goals, but it was also a close game and a pretty electric environment. It's just different era of hockey. So yeah, I'll call it a dead heat with 2010 to be politically correct. But I think probably Vancouver, honestly, is a little bit ahead of it in my mind. But it was, the fact we're even talking about something being in that stratosphere in itself tells you something. That I've waited 16 years to watch a game that good. And it was pretty much that good. And maybe in someone's eyes, even better. Certainly if you're American, I'm sure you're saying it's even better.
Last one for you, CJ. After the excitement of the Olympics, how ready are you for the continuation of the NHL regular season and the run to the March NHL trade deadline?
I'm excited for the deadline. By the time this podcast is out, basically the trade freeze might have lifted. It lifts Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So by Monday morning, if you're hearing this on Monday, trades can happen again, and it's not that far till March 6th. And obviously, for everyone who wasn't participating, there's been a lot of time to have some trade conversations and start really zeroing in and focusing in on what the deadline might look like. So I think this will be an exciting couple of weeks. Now, are the games going to match up to it? Hell no. Let's just not even pretend.
You're not even going to give people hope on that, huh?
No, it's not the same thing. It's a different sport.
No, it's not.
But the playoffs are going to kick ass. I guarantee you that. They always do. And we're officially now in the run that's sort of a sprint to the playoffs. It's certainly a sprint to the trade deadline, but beyond that, we got some interesting races, especially the Eastern Conference, for some teams that trying to end long droughts there, and a team like the Panthers that you mentioned, or the Leafs that are trying to get back in it, that have fallen probably farther out than it's likely. But we'll see what happens when everyone gets back. Would take a toll of the damage. We know players like Kevin Fiala got injured, Josh Morrissey got injured this tournament. They weren't able to play their last game, but Sidney Crosby didn't play the last game. But I wonder how many players come back from Milan with injuries where they can't play in the NHL.
Yeah.
Or just fatigue, just general, not being at their level, because it's a lot to ask. I think it's going to be kind of a quirky end of this regular season would be my prediction. And I think it's going to be pretty busy leading into the deadline. And so you can't complain. It's apples and oranges. It's not a comparable, but I still think this will be pretty darn exciting if you love hockey, the next few weeks and months of what we have in store with the NHL.
Looking forward to it, CJ. Great work as always. For everyone who expected Ask CJ to start off the week, we're going to move that to later this week for our Thursday episode. So get your questions in, whether through X, whether through a message in a bottle, Blue Sky, whatever the name of the social platforms are out there. We'll find a way to get your questions in. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. And thank you for partaking in the Olympic coverage with us on our podcast. And of course, if you're in Canada, of course, with CBC, TSN, and Sportsnet and whatnot. And we are looking forward to continuing our coverage of the rest of the NHL regular season and playoffs and beyond. And we will talk to you all next time.
We'll be back to our regular scheduled programming.
Oh, that's going to be great. Peace. The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.